Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Malhama and the Mahdi. This is the second episode of the Mahdi's Dark Night of the Soul. In our previous episode, we were discussing how the comparative study of religion can help to shed light upon the hadith about the Mahdi being rectified in one night and being made ready for his mission. And comparative religion provides an interesting framework because there are the stories of St. John of the Cross from post-Islamic Spain and Roman Catholic mystics from that vicinity, from Iberia. And then scholars have said that there is a relationship between them and an influence from the Sufis that had lived there in Al-Andalus for the 700-year period of Islamic rule. And so some of the conceptualization of this dark night of the soul may have come through an Islamic framework and lens work, perhaps, or had some influences. And this is something interesting and worth looking into in more depth. But regardless, this conceptualization from St. John of the Cross and the Roman Catholic mystics, it's related to a process whereby the seeker, the spiritual aspirant, the one who's seeking to be near to God and even to have the ego dissolved and to attain union with God, or in that particular Catholic context, mystical union with Christ, so that the ego is gone and then that people do not meet John of the Cross, they meet Jesus Christ. So this was along the lines of how it was conceptualized, at least according to my understanding. This is sophisticated. I would like to understand it better. However, we do not have a lot of time right now. So let's just get down to the heart of the matter. The dark night of the soul is a time of intense purification, whereby impurities are removed, obstacles are removed, and the seeker goes through tremendous suffering as they are taken down a difficult path toward union with God in that conceptualization. This is not my conceptualization. Or union with the will of God. This is more how I view it, the will of Allah. Or in another way that I lean toward, union with the prophetic reality. Whether you're talking about the Muhammadan reality, the prophetic reality, which goes back to Adam alayhi salam. Like, my belief is that every one of us is a direct descendant of Adam alayhi salam. There's nothing else but direct descendants of Adam alayhi salam. And by going through a systematic, holistic Tawbah and Tazkiyah process, we clear the clutter, we remove the obscurations and get back to our fitra. And in a state of fitra, getting back to our innate purity, then the prophetic reality manifests, and people would meet the prophetic reality within us. They would meet Muhammad, they would meet Musa, they would meet Isa, etc. Alayhum salam. So this is how I'm conceptualizing of it at this time. I'm open to new data, new information, new understanding. So if you have things to share, please put them in the comments. Think about this as collaborating in a puzzle, as we piece together a puzzle to see the picture as it really is. So this conceptualization of a dark night of the soul has connections to the broader Abrahamic tradition, especially the Roman Catholic mystical tradition, but it may also have connections within the Eastern Orthodox tradition and the Coptic tradition that I'm unaware of at this time. So if you know about this, let me know, please. Also, we've got conceptualizations of the dark night of the soul has influenced areas of psychology and as I mentioned before, a potential Sufi psychological aspect. So if you know how the dark night of the soul may have been conceptualized in Sufi circles, please put that in the comments as well. I'm very interested in this, to see the ways that the prophetic tradition has continuity even across traditions. So in psychology, people speak about the dark night of the soul. Again, this has to do with ego purification or ego dissolution, perhaps. And then I know for sure as well that in meditation circles, they speak of dark nights of the soul in some of the literature. And also Perhaps in the Cloud of Unknowing, a very interesting Christian book that I read many years ago, there are also some similar conceptualizations that link us to the early monastic tradition of Christianity, but I don't know exactly how it lays out in its expression. So anyway, these various areas, the Christian mystical tradition, the purification of the soul, first a purification of the body, a purification of the spiritual faculties, coming into a true reality, an experience of reality as it really is, perhaps, coming into union with Christ in that tradition, with the prophetic reality, or into union with the will of Allah. And I think that pretty much is a very interesting way of perceiving it and conceptualizing it. And of the psychological journey that we go through, reconceptualizing of depression and struggles that we go through in life from a spiritual direction, that this is all a part of us becoming spiritually mature. And I would argue that when it comes to the Imam Mahdi, that there are also practices related to the dark night of the soul. And the Mahdi coming out of a period of brokenness and toxicity. Some have suggested sin, but I think that looking at it as brokenness and toxicity and imbalance is perhaps a more accurate way of looking at it, especially considering our current context where so many people are mentally ill, mentally unstable, depressed, bodily toxic, eating toxic foods. And so I've come to understand that Islam is a holistic and organic path of purification. And I think this matches up with the dark night of the soul. At least it worked in my own personal dark night of the soul. This is like what brought me out of it was holistic and organic living and refining, being refined, purified and refined ethically and energetically. So I think that this helps me to better understand the Imam Mahdi's path and his dark night of the soul. Finally, I just wanted to, and I would love to hear your thoughts on these matters, because I think what we're seeing is sometimes in Hadith and in Quran, we can have a whole lifetime of information condensed within just a few words. That's one of the beauties of the Islamic tradition, is the ability to to see an entire life condensed within half of an ayat, within a part of a hadith, and we can unpack it, and it has tremendous transformative meaning within it. And I want us to think about these materials in a transformative sense. How can we be transformed as rapidly as possible and be of benefit to as many as possible in such difficult days where our humanity is under threat? We are under threat of genocide and elimination and extinction. And so until our last breath, we need to be cultivating and maintaining our human integrity and our human dignity and seeking our spiritual maturation and our total transformation. This is as we seek to return to the garden, individually and collectively. So, as a final thought, I want us to consider that the dark night of the soul also relates to certain practices, to late night prayer. This is a time-honored tradition within the prophetic tradition across space and time. Late night prayer is very important, especially if we think about it in terms of prostration practice. Sajda is very important. Spend as much time in sajda as possible. Still silent sajda and still silent sitting. Sitting in the darkness. I was just reading a verse earlier from Jesus Christ in the Gospels, in the Christian Gospels, of Isa alayhi salam, of Prophet Yeshua, the Messiah, alayhi salam, the one who is soon to return, inshallah. And he was condemning the hypocrites who pray publicly in the synagogues so that people will perceive of them as righteous and holy people. And they want the attention drawn to them. They do all the special prayers, and they have their religious clothing and their religious uniforms and all their special religious symbology. And he says what you need to do is go into your closet and pray in private. Go into your house, close the door, go into the dark closet, pray in the darkness alone. Draw near unto Allah. And the other thing connected to the closet, praying in the darkness, it also includes the cave meditation tradition. There's a time-honored tradition within the prophetic path of praying and meditating and contemplating in cave settings, whether they are actual, factual, natural caves, like our Nebi, peace be upon him, like Isa, like Elijah, like Elisha, Eliasa, like Musa and Shuaib, alayhum salam. So many prophets spent time praying and meditating and contemplating in caves. Dawood, I mean, like you name it, it goes on and on and on. A very long list of prophets praying in caves. So we can also simulate cave conditions, as Isa said, in a closet. We can pray in a closet. Like I had some very powerful experiences in 2020 praying in a closet, very literally, that happened to face toward Mecca. And I would spend hours in the darkness praying in this state. And I had many powerful experiences praying for many days straight in the darkness. Water fasting and dry fasting and doing traditional som. So I would argue we need as many people to attain enlightenment, purification, and spiritual maturation as possible, as quickly as possible. So I would argue that these night practices, we need to align our lives with the Imam Mahdi. And if we intend to be his companions, we're not waiting for, he's not a magician, he's not a sorcerer, he's not going to change your spiritual status. You have to make the efforts you have to reorient your heart toward truth and seek to surrender to truth completely, utterly, totally, so that you can be transformed. And my argument is that we will have a collective of people, kind of like 100 monkey theory, that will be ready all at once to live in a beautiful manner, to behave justly, compassionately, wisely, the whole makers, the healed healers. So all at once. So let us consider how the dark night of the soul has practical expressions and practical benefits. So until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.